Hey.
Off to a great start. That kind of hurt my knee also.
I'm worried about that. They did warn us.
I thought it was 2 steps. It's 3. Okay. All right. That last one's a doozy, everybody. Be careful. Welcome, everyone. I love coming to Austin and to the Trip Fest because there's like always a ton of people and you all are so engaged and informed and care so much and it makes me feel great about America. And I get to be here with my friend Tim Walz, the governor of the great state of Minnesota.
I was thinking there's a whole bunch of really engaged people or people who have nothing better to do on a Thursday afternoon. But either way, thank you all for being here.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's just like, I went and saw James McMurtry last night do the acoustic show at the Continental Club. I was like, all real Austin. So you all, I mean, I feel like Tim Walz sort of burst onto the national scene for a lot of us. Gwen Walz is here as well, who I realized late, we knew each other more than 20 years ago. We'll get to that, when you all first started getting involved in politics as part of the John Kerry campaign. But you may not know a lot about him because he just sort of burst onto the national scene as Vice President.
And then just faded away.
It's like, and I worked on I was President Obama's communications director. I was Hillary Clinton's communications director, and thanks. I heard that for Hillary. And I, for the last 90 days, you had 96. I had 90 days. I worked for Doug Emhoff, the vice president's husband. Oh my God, he's the greatest guy. You all missed out getting to know Doug.
He's a great guy.
He is he's
a great guy.
The Tim and Doug events. They didn't let us do a lot, but they were always great. But we don't know a lot. Two-term governor, elected in 18, 22. Gotten a lot of great stuff done in Minnesota. If you want free lunch at school,
breakfast and lunch for all kids. No.
If you want some voting rights, Governor Walz signed that into law. If you'd like some reproductive rights, Governor Walz signed that into law.
Reproductive rights. We're going to have 100% clean electricity by 2035. Free college. And I was telling Jen, it's really funny when you have a well-fed, well-educated, housed population. It's funny that we were named one of the top states for business. This year we moved ahead of Texas in that. So I use that a lot. I didn't know how that would go over, but
and one of the top states to raise a family, right?
One of the best states to raise a family,
yeah.
And I think that's the goal. And the really key on that is your family, and whether it's protecting reproductive freedoms, or we're a state that we're a trans refuge state, which basically means people get to live the lives they want to, and you don't have to worry about it because you never had to worry about it before, and it doesn't matter who's using the urinal next to you, they're living their life accordingly. And so I said it's really interesting. So.
Also, we're going to talk for about 45 minutes, and we're going to have questions. And if you want to submit a question, you submit it to texastribune.org/ask. I think I got that right. Okay, so let's go back to, you have a really interesting backstory, and like a lot of leaders, you lost a parent at a young age, right? Yep. This was, you grew up in Nebraska, small town in Nebraska.
I did.
And joined the National Guard on your 17th birthday,
yep.
Which I think your father had also done.
Yeah, Korea.
And lost him from lung cancer at age 19. And then you had kind of a tough time. You said that was a time that really shaped you. So tell us about those years and how that track.
Yeah, well, and I think for so
Included
many.
Texas.
Well, and when she said small town, when you're from a small town, you try and out small town other people. And so I always say I had 24 kids in my graduating class, 12 were cousins. So it's true, true. And small town, really close. My father was a teacher and then a superintendent of schools in a small community and a lifelong chain smoker. Some of my fondest memories growing up was riding around with him in the Studebaker, and he'd have me light those Salem menthols for him, and hand it over to it. And the days of no seatbelts and lighting cigarettes for your dad. But that generation, hardworking, never, kind of the pillar of that. My mom stayed at home, took care of us. So it was kind of that very typical American story. And then he got lung cancer, surprisingly, right? After he died, family resources are pretty thin. He had moved us back to my mom's hometown where her brothers were there and her parents were still there. But just had to go figure things out. College wasn't it, and so started moving around. Ended up down in Houston for a while and processed mortgage loans there, and I attended a couple semesters at the University of Houston, which which I have to tell you, some of you gray hairs in here, it was $12 a credit hour for as much. You remember this, honest to God. And it wasn't teaching assistants, it was full professors that were there. But the thing that blew my mind is I had to take those first 2 courses, I had to take 6 hours of Texas history. I'm like, what in the heck? I know the Battle of San Jacinto and all of the rest. But then did that, ended up in Arkansas, wanted to see that, built suntan beds.
This is amazing to me that they were manufactured in the U.S. in the 80s, I guess.
They were. We did the upholstery. It was an upholstery shop that had 2 brothers, Turner brothers, and they contracted with Suntana, I guess it was, and we did the upholstery part of that and worked the night shift building suntan beds, just trying to figure out. It was some of those experiences that led me to believe this is damn hard work. I need to go back to college and do something. But I think I always wanted to be a teacher and ended up back in Nebraska at Chadron State College.
How do you say it?
Chadron. Well, you know it as the Harvard of the Midwest, but it's Chadron State College.
We all know it as that.
It's just south of Rapid City out there in western on the Wyoming-South Dakota border, but it was also right near Pine Ridge, where I got my opportunity to be first teaching job, a 4th grade teacher in Pine Ridge. And some of you know that story.
I know.
You know.
I've been to Pine Ridge with President Obama.
Yeah.
The Obamas were never the same after visiting Pine Ridge.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
and there's a little town called White Clay, Nebraska that at one point in time had the highest per capita sales of alcohol anywhere because, of course, the reservation in Pine Ridge was dry, and on the Nebraska side of the border, all it was a depot to sell liquor, and it's a pretty bad story. That whole story is, and then ended up teaching in a small rural school, and I had to split a classroom because it was growing. It was kind of a hub for the railroad out in Alliance, Nebraska. And I had one side of the room, and there was a young English teacher on the other side of the room who thought I spoke too loudly and would always let me know that. Yeah. And that young English teacher became my wife, Gwen, and she said, Tim, you did, because I'd spent some time in China. I taught in China. You might have heard that last fall. God forbid your vice president would know China and could speak a little Chinese. That would be a horrible thing to have happen now, to actually understand China. But Gwen always joked and said, Tim, you did your Peace Corps time in China. I'm doing mine in Nebraska. Let's move back to Minnesota. And so she moved us to Mankato, Minnesota, where her family's from, and we started teaching school there.
So you played football in high school, right?
I did.
Yeah, and then you became a coach when you taught high school. And I thought one of the most moving moments of the Democratic Convention last summer was when your football team came back as a surprise, right? Did you not know that was going to happen? I was
whole
he's going to be a wreck. He's going to be a wreck.
The whole thing is a wreck where they do this to you. They think it's. They did not tell me. I had not seen some of these kids in 25 years. They did not tell me this, and all the preparations for it's scary as shit.
It is.
We're in
scary,
church.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, he was gonna.
I told Jen backstage, I said, I don't smoke or drink, but I am a connoisseur of profanity.
He said, shit, I'm gonna swear in church. I just know it.
But I'm standing there getting ready to go, and there's like some young staffers around, and they're like, oh my God, the crowd is crazy, and there's a guest, there's a special speaker, it's Oprah. And I'm like, oh, great. And Bill Clinton's speaking. I'm like, oh, great. And you're going to be on, aren't you excited? I said, no, I'm pretty scared, This is like going. And then I'm standing there waiting to go on at the curtain. And all of a sudden, from the other side, they brought in all these football players who had played for me, who I hadn't seen, who are now men in their 40s. And it was...
I mean, I'm crying. I tear up just thinking about it, because it was like
They wanted it to be authentic. I'm like, yeah, it's authentic, but now I'm all emotional. I got to go speak, and...
Yeah, I was like, I said, don't do that as a surprise, because we had something like that for Doug Emhoff, and I was like, we got to tell him, because otherwise he'll be a wreck. Like, his son had made the video about him, and it was really moving. I was like, Cole made it. We got to tell him the day before, because he's gonna like cry on stage, and like that's great, but that's not what we're like going for. So, but like what it was but what's like I am obsessed with football. I love football. I know I'm in a big football town and state. And it's like the only thing we have
I don't think
left.
they like it down here much. Yeah.
It's the only thing we have left where people still, can agree or at least fight in a fun way. And you lost your father at a young age. Then you said, you told me a little bit backstage about how you felt like the system, like there were systems in place that kind of helped support you. But then, it seems important to me that as a teacher yourself, you chose to be a mentor to these young men. Yeah. And and obviously there was a bond, because they all came back 20 years later, and you could see there was it's not like you all won the national championships or
We
something.
did win the state championship, though.
Well, there you go.
Don't ever close that yearbook. I'll tell you all about it if you want to hear it.
So that, yeah. What do you think what was that about for you, that you wanted to be that kind of mentor? What do you think those bonds are about?
Yeah.
How can we replicate that elsewhere? Particularly because, men in particular feel like we all need a need for community, but there's something about that team.
Yeah. Look, team. I love it. It's something quintessentially American in football. It's overly complicated. It's pretty violent, which seems to be very American in a lot of ways. But it is something about it. It's a fun game. But the coaching football, and I love doing it. But I think the big thing is both Gwen and I did this. We did everything too. I coached girls basketball. We did middle school track. Gwen was speech and debate coach. We built and ran the musicals. Gwen was plays. Prom. We were proms and. I'm a masterful builder. I built a full-sized waterfall 25 feet high in the middle of the gym, which would have worked out fine had Lindsey Christensen in high heels not poked a hole in the bottom of it and ruined the gym floor, and I nearly lost my job over it. But our theory was, when you're teaching and in schools, that is a microcosm of society and needs to be there, and everybody needs to be a part of it, and you need to provide opportunities. For the introverts in here, I'm sorry to all of you, but I do think the vast majority of people, we're social animals, and we want to belong to something. I've always said, Donald Trump understands that. He gave him a uniform, the red hat, he gave him the slogans, he gave him something. People don't go to those rallies, I'm convinced, to hear Donald Trump talk. They go to be around other people who think like them and share those ideas. That's not that different. And you've heard that story. If you don't give kids something in school to be a part of, they will go find something else to be a part of that might not be as healthy. And so we always tried to go out and recruit, bring them in. And what I always said about football is, at least in Minnesota, in our schools, we never cut anybody. If you came out, you played. And it was about being part of that team. And I think it's a bonding experience, setting goals together. And what was really fun is a lot of those kids who, great football players, I got over when Gwen was doing the plays. I would build the set. And I would recruit my players to come over there. And the respect they learned when we would put on the school play, all of you know who've been in school plays, you work your tails off and it's 3 nights and then it's over. Our players were like, they should do this play every week, like every Friday, like play it again. Because they're like, they did all this work and it's so great. And it was really that bringing them together. So I know a little bit on the campaign, President Clinton warned me. He said, don't let them pigeonhole you into something that you're the football coach, that's fun type of thing. He said, you're a consequential governor of a state that got things done. But I said, I'm pretty comfortable in that mode of being a teacher or being a coach, because being a governor, honest to God, is not that much different. It's on a bigger scale of trying to rally people around, purpose, direction, and motivation for a cause. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, right. I mean, we need that. We need coaches, and we need,
And you don't always get it right. I said, I think that was the big thing. It's the life lessons. There were times when things don't go right, and I remember, and my players remember this more than anything. Like in a moment, you yell at a kid. I remember there was one. He came off the field, and I'm like, man, you got to make that play. And he looked at me and goes, you don't think I don't know that? And I needed to, and I said it in front of the players, and I said, yeah, you're right. That's right. And then I think apologizing to kids in front of their peers to say, you're right, that was out of hand. That's what you're trying to do in that. Yeah, you want to win games, but I don't think it's a cliche. You're trying to teach some of those life lessons. So when you're in the middle of those stressful situations, it's important for people to see that. And you're going to fail on some of it, and they have to see how you do that too.
So stressful situations. If there's anything that is more... So I worked in politics for a very long time. I worked for President Clinton for 8 years, President Obama, I worked for Hillary. So I've seen the running mate process happen. I worked for John and Elizabeth Edwards, both before and after he was the running mate. If there's anything more daunting than having to become the Democratic nominee with 107 days left, it might be becoming the running mate, just shot out of a cannon, out of, not out of nowhere, but out of Minnesota. And I just don't know if it's obvious, so let me share some of the ways that this is hard. You go from being a governor who you're your own person to being a spokesperson for somebody else. I mean, I just don't think people appreciate. So it's like, Tim Walz is so magical. He's going to be magical every day on the campaign trail. Except now Tim Walz is no longer Governor Walz. He is a representative of this ticket, right? And that just breaks out in a very weird way. That's like all of a sudden you are every. It's just a different skill. It's a different test, and then your family is also shot out of this cannon, and then your record without any ability to tell a story in the way that you intend or want to, intentional way, it's worse than even launching a presidential campaign, because everyone in the world, literally, like you told me about, you're hearing from Luxembourg and small towns in Germany, or hey, guess what? Your great-grandfather was born here.
It's true. I'm going to see them this week. It's a true story.
Luxembourg is also super proud of your Luxembourgian.
Yeah.
But
I'm probably more popular there than here, so that's.
Can't imagine. You're super popular in Minnesota. So, but you can't. So it's not like people might say why can't you tell your story better with a running mate? It's because everyone in the world is trying to find something out about this person, and it just happens, bam, 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 like that. So is there more? So I thought it was easier for me to say these things.
No, I do appreciate this. This is all true. It is really different.
It's so hard, and it's so hard on the family, and it's just a really difficult. I mean, it's an incredibly privileged and empowering and wonderful place to be in, but it's also not easy. Is there more you would like to add there about?
Yeah.
Because then I have some questions.
Look, first and foremost, what a privilege. I said it was a privilege to be Kamala Harris's running mate. I was proud to be with her, and look, it's not an I told you so moment, but God dang, would we be in a different place today? I mean, and so that being said, and Jen is right. My role was to take that, and these campaigns are big, and it's like big corporations, and they're so big, and people are saying, well, why wouldn't you say more of this and do all that? Because there's a strategy that goes into it. Now, obviously, someone said afterwards, after the campaign, they said, is there anything you would have done differently? I said, yes, we would have won. That would have been different. And so with that being the case, you kind of have to look at it, but it is a really crazy thing, and if you view it as public service, you're out there, but the scrutiny that comes down, one of the funniest moments was in how this worked is my daughter Hope, who traveled with me to kind of keep me grounded.
Hope.
Yeah, Hope is an interesting person, and she's just a great kid, but we were traveling, and I saw the team was getting a little nervous, so I'm like, oh God, what did I do now? A new story's gonna break. When Kamala picked me, I said, look, you're gonna get, with me, 80% of it's gonna be solid. 10% of it's going to be really good, and 10 of it's going to get us in trouble. So I said, you gotta weigh that, and they do the big, and they knew everything that was in the vetting, so they knew it would come out. But it was so funny. It was popping up, and they weren't quite sure how they were going to talk to me about this. And my daughter looks over at me, and she shows me this article that they were running a story that, when I was a young man living in China or whatever, I had dated a Chinese girl or whatever. My daughter looked at me and said, "There's a lot about you I don't know."
Thank God all the world is researching my father.
Yes, but it's all part of it. They put it in. When you're the running mate, my job was to be there to support, and I'm proud of what we did. I'm proud of and I stand by it today, that Kamala Harris would make a fantastic president. So.
And of course, amen, brother. And of course, no one knows how hard it is to be the running mate than Kamala Harris.
Yes, that did help. That did help.
Yeah, because I would hear it a lot from, Doug, who could,
Quick one on her.
Gwen's,
First night in Philadelphia, you're talking about what it's like. We're in Mankato. We don't know if we're going to get picked or not. The whole thing of getting picked was just crazy. It's like a soul-searching colonoscopy, and they get you, and then
it's insane.
And then you don't know. And I missed the call. Then I got the call. Within 15 minutes, there's helicopters over my house. My streets are shut down. Secret Service comes in. They said, "You need to pack. You're going to Philadelphia." I said, "I'll go pack." And they said, "No, you won't. We will." And they went up and throw all your stuff in. Within, you know how this works.
It's not. None of this isn't exaggerated. This is absolutely how it works.
And all of a sudden, around our house, it's total chaos. Their sister-in-laws are there, who are like angels to our family. They're there cleaning stuff up, getting our family ready, packing and ready. We get on the plane, we fly to Philadelphia, we land, we go to the university there, we go into the locker room, and we had about an hour and a half, and they said, "You're gonna go out and she's gonna introduce you, and you're gonna give the big speech tonight." And I said, "Well, I don't know for sure what I'm going to say here. We have the speech." I said, "Well, how am I going to do that?" And they said, "You're going to use teleprompter." I said, "Well, I've never used a teleprompter." And they said, "Don't worry about it." I went back in the shower room. They had a mock-up of the stage exactly made with a teleprompter. And I'm, of course, like, "Oh, this is really cool." And they said, "Quit it. You got to get ready to deliver the speech." And so we're getting dressed. We give the speech. And I hadn't seen that. And we're doing some quick hits for fundraising, all the stage backstage. And all of this is brand new. I mean, it is like our heads are exploding. Mine is anyway. And hadn't seen the vice president yet. We had a couple minutes to meet with her, and then we walked, and we're standing there. 15,000 people out there know it's going to be on TV. Got to give this speech for the first time off a teleprompter. And I come out of one way, she comes out the other way, and we're standing at the back curtain waiting for them to play Freedom, and we were going to walk out. And she looks over at me and she goes, "Don't F this up." And I'm like, and I'm like, honest to God. She didn't say F. And so, and I said, "No, I got this." But yeah, that's how it is. And
it is like, and it really, and it's like, "Hi, here's your staff."
Yes.
Here is your
staff.
Yes. Yes.
I got to bring one person along with me. Like,
that's generous, by the way. That one person doesn't always happen, but like you had a very good team.
That was her that was the vice president
that was
understanding.
Her saying, "I know. Look, you got to get the guy one person. I know how it is."
Because they don't. Your staff is not on that campaign. So
your staff in Minnesota was great, but you had a good staff. Liz Allen, best.
Oh my God, they were the best.
They're best. You had they had a really good team. I was there that night, and it was Temple, and it was when the two of them walked out on stage. That was a deafening cheer like I had never experienced, and I worked for Barack Obama.
I thought we were going to win.
You can just see, obviously it was not enough to win in Pennsylvania, but that hunger to move on past the Trump years was so
it was electric.
There, and I feel it. And we saw it in 2025 elections too. I'm interested to hear, because you said also we should have taken more risks and been more aggressive, which I totally agree with. It was super hard though, by the way. You're running against some guy who's been running for president for 10 years, and you come in with somebody else's record, and all the reasons why it was hard. Right, it's hard. But I just think that the way we run presidential campaigns, I think about this a lot, is pretty antiquated. The way we communicate around is pretty antiquated. These debates are important, but in your debate, J.D. Vance was all Yale debate performer, he did well at that. Going into the debate, Tim Walz's approval rating with people was 52%, and when he came out, it was 60%. It's just
it was bizarre.
Because he came out as a jackass, but it was but we saw that you are a smart, nice guy. That actually worked. But what I'm always thinking about is were there moments that you felt did work, where you felt you were able to break through and communicate digitally or whatever? Because I think a lot about and paid media is so that whole system is so broken and all needs to be like revamped. But what did work? Where did you feel like you were heard or like, wow, that was great?
Yeah, and I do think we learned in that. And look, it was certainly the vice president was, got great education, had done it before. I said one thing is I'm
Are we talking about JD or?
Yeah, JD.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm convinced that teachers are terrible at debaters because you're trying to find common ground. You're trying, and my instincts are try and find a compromise and come to yes. So they were really good about that. I do think though that the structure, and all of you've heard it so much, like you go on 60 Minutes and you do that interview, or you have these people are so beyond that, and the vast majority of people are not watching 60 Minutes or reading print newspaper. They're getting it in so many other ways. I know it's like that overused cliche that you have to fill all those lanes. I'm not certain we were filling all the lanes. There was a couple examples where I thought we were most effective. There was one, it was kind of an off-the-record first campaign, and we were with the vice president. Gwen and I were with Doug and Kamala, and we get off the two things happen. First, we're pulling into this, and we're on the bus with the vice president, and we're still freaking out about this. We're kind of like fanboy and fangirl in this one. I'm like, oh, we're on the ticket. We got to get serious here. And but we were getting off the bus, and there were dueling rallies on one side or the other, and the vice president never missed a beat and turned to me and said, don't forget, we're doing this for both sides of the street. And which I thought was, in a moment, it was just the four of us. No one said anything, and was very heartfelt. But then we went and visited a school, and it was on a Friday here in the fall. And we were in the band room, and the band was playing the school fight song. The football players had their jerseys on. The cheerleaders were there, and some of the teachers were there, and it was just off the record gonna just go in and say hi. Well, we walk in the door, and it's exciting, and I mean, this is like, for me, the air I breathed my whole life. But the vice president, she walks in there and she says, oh, it's so great to be here. I was a band kid. And I'm like, no, I didn't know you were a band kid, and neither did America. And those of you in here who were band kids, that's a big damn deal. So this is a voting bloc that sticks together. And she started talking to these young folks about it. And I kept saying this, that I saw this several times with the vice president, again, of just that sense of connection she made, and especially with kids who were like, now I feel heard. And driving down those roads, this was south of Savannah, kind of small roads or whatever, and our big buses coming by or whatever, and little girls out there with signs, with Kamala signs. That felt right, and I said, I want more of that. And then we get you got to have the big rallies, but that's preaching to the choir. If somebody's going to go stand in the heat in Las Vegas and come to watch a rally, it's the same thing about going to a Trump rally. They were necessarily coming to see us. They were coming because, God damn, I'm sick of this, and I want something new, and it's the rally, and it's fun. But there's other things that are more effective. And I think the one we did, it was on Halloween, and it was in Erie, Pennsylvania. And they decided to kind of roll the dice a little bit. They got this small focus group of about a half dozen people who were undecideds or leaning Trump, couple farmers and laborers, and brought them in and filmed the interaction with me. I got to tell you, it was the first time I didn't feel scripted. The first time I felt like I could be just, and this is where I feel like that retail politics, that's where I come from. This is what I wanted to do. Before we went in, it was super funny though, because we're with the Secret Service, we're in the car, and my daughter's in the back, and she's looking down the street, and she's like, oh, there comes a killer clown, because it's Halloween, dressed up. And he keeps walking towards where all the Secret Service are kind of cordoning off this area, and the Secret Service guy goes, yeah, that killer clown's about 30 seconds from being on the ground. And Hope's videoing it. And they're like, don't put that out on social media. But we went in there and had an honest conversation. I grew up around farming. I served on the Ag Committee for 12 years. I was a subcommittee chair, or ranking member, and I was involved in writing 3 farm bills. And all of a sudden, these guys like, my God, you know a lot about agriculture. I said, yes, and we've got better policies. I'll damn sure guarantee you our soybean farmers wouldn't be going broke right now because we understood that. And it was super time consuming, and it's awkward with all the things there, but it was so authentic. These folks were truly, everybody's like sometimes when they say they're independents, we know what that means. And but these people were truly, and they're truly independents, and they were truly undecided. And I was convinced there were 6 of them. I thought I got 4 of them when we went in there. That we, and talked to it. And the other 2 were kind of, other issues that were impacting them. But I just think we have got to figure out a better way, because we are so removed. And maybe you can't do retail politics anymore.
Well, you do it, and you do it really well. I mean, I think your best campaign. You launched your re-election campaign to run for governor recently, to run for governor for a third term, and you had one that was like more scripted, or it was like more about your agenda and what you accomplished, what you want to do. But then there was one that was just following you around the fair, and it was phenomenal. And it's just him. I mean, you see him. It's like, does a man complete a sentence?
I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it here. You have a fine state fair in Texas, almost as good as the Minnesota State Fair. I'm saying it in here. Look, the Minnesota State Fair is religion for us. And you just go to that. And if you're going to run in Minnesota, it's 12 days. You might want to sleep overnight in the 4-H barn, but you're there 12 days, and it is straight up retail politic and face-to-face, conversation after conversation after conversation. When I went last year, they snuck me in. I served 2 ice cream cones and bought a pork chop on a stick, and I was gone in 15 minutes.
So crabby about it, I bet.
Yeah, and look, well, we didn't know it. Thank God we won Minnesota. But the idea was, we're not going to spend a ton of time in Minnesota. But I said that type of retail politicking has a reach, and I think new media outlets give us that. I think opportunities to get out and talk. I think the expectations. You saw a lot of motivated people 2 weeks ago come out and vote. And they voted for a spectrum of candidates. But for the most part, those candidates were folks that were showing up, that were talking to people, that were willing to ask and answer hard questions.
So, and the thing that I think retail politics can matter because they capture all of that, right? And you capture it, and it's Tim Walz just like doing what you're doing, like, hey, how you doing? Hey, kid, and it's able to capture, 3-second snippets of you, put it together in a video, and share that. And I feel like, I have always believed as a communications person, I was like, I never tell a candidate or, a politician what to say. I listen to what they believe and what they say, and I say, of the things you say, this is the best way to present it. And you can do that digitally. Don't ever have a scripted ad. Follow your candidate around, shoot everything they do, and then put that together, so that you're telling a consistent storyline. So there's not like an ad on the economy and then one on democracy that's like, ugh, that none of it adds up to a
I know you're asking
story.
me a question. I'm going to ask on this one. What is the role of consultants who have a model, they have it, they use the data, they use the polling? Look, we can always use data and do that, but if you chase the polling, you're in trouble.
I've never believed in it,
Yeah.
There's good reason to discount what I just said, but I've always believed in your gut. I've believed in politicians that believe in their gut, that want to take people somewhere, aren't just interested in where people are. You want to understand people's mindset, but I am I'm a big believer in, John Edwards is a good example. Think about the 2004 John Edwards, if you know who he is. But it was somebody who ran for president in 2004. He wanted to talk about poverty. Everybody said poverty is not a popular issue that Democrats should talk about. It's a bad issue for us. And it polls poorly, and it was really important to him. And he almost became the Democratic nominee because he made that a centerpiece. I just think if it motivates you, let's show people that, and that gives them a sense of who you are, because credibility is such a hard thing right now.
It's a credibility, and I think this goes back that, look, they were worried about me, and look, we have fantastic policies in Minnesota, and there's nothing radical about feeding kids or getting health care or making college affordable. There's nothing radical about that. But I said I am going to defend, I will compromise with you, but I will not compromise with you about human rights, about personal freedoms. And I said the issue around transgender individuals, I said I'm not going to waver. We protect them in Minnesota. We'll continue to do so and make the case. And I don't think that hurts you any, even if people disagree on some of where the issues were, because they know at least you have a conviction and you stood with it. I was a little nervous when Trump made that horrific ad. If you don't respond to that...
Which horrific ad?
The one about...
Right?
Yeah, sorry.
I don't even know what he's talking about. What?
Yeah, the Kamala's for they, them, for you.
Yeah.
And I'm watching that on a football game, which of course they put it on a
that was the
football
whole thing. It
game
was all over
at the end of the.
ESPN.
And I said, look, this needs a response, and that response could be several things, but I think not responding, that ad sunk in, and if you were a transgender individual or an ally, you heard silence, and that's silence is worse than anything, actually, when it comes to the demonization of people. People are dying over this. People are losing their lives simply by being who they are. And I don't think if you stand in that, that wasn't your intention, but your inability to respond to it makes it so.
So it's apparent that Tim Walz is an awesome and engaging guy, but like you are a fighter. Like you had a really progressive agenda and record in Minnesota, got a lot done, but you want to fight for it and defend it. Like talk about your approach to that, because like some people, we can't be scared, right? Like
we
you
can't.
were saying before, you got to be more aggressive in what like Trump's aggressive.
Yeah, he is. And if there's anything we learned by this, I mean, changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico, just take that. And I bring this up as a geographer because I'm super offended, and I think it's the #1 issue in America. No one else does, but it's the idea, and this is where these tech bros come in with him too. This idea about breaking the status quo and being willing to try something so out of the norm that you get a paradigm shift. And that's good in some areas, and it's horrific in other areas. But Trump showed us, and I think this is where frustration with Democrats sometimes comes in, is, well, you guys could have done some of this stuff the whole time. So instead of being crazy with tariffs and renaming this, you guys could have gotten crazy and got health care out better to people, or done universal coverage or something. You could have done some of these things and didn't. Now, whether that's true operationally or not, there is a lot of truth in that. In Minnesota in 2022, and keep in mind, Minnesota is a purple state. We have voted for Democrats longer than any other state for president, but we have oscillated back and forth. And for
your state legislature.
For the first, right now, Republicans control the state house. It was the first time in 2022 in about a decade that we woke up late that night and figured out that we had a 3-vote majority in the House and a 1-vote majority in the Senate. And I gathered with the Senate leader and the House leader and myself, and we put a whiteboard together and we listed all of the things that we were going to get done. 29, 30 issues. And about partway through the session, we had a couple things done, and I remember somebody said, "This has been a good session." And I said, "We have every other thing to have to get done." And we did them. Every single one of them with a 1-vote majority. And so, for example, starting January 1st, Minnesota will have the most aggressive and the most generous paid family and medical leave in the country. We implemented the most aggressive child tax credit of $1,750 per child from age 0 to 19, and we pay it ahead of time. And what the implications of that were, Minnesota now has the lowest childhood poverty rate of any of the states in the country. Again, couple that with free breakfast and free lunch, and last year Minnesota had the highest graduation rates at any time in our state's history. So there's a correlation. Well-fed, well-educated, safe constituents make your economy grow and everybody benefits. In Minnesota, we have a saying that came from our late Senator Wellstone: when we do better, we all do better. And the idea is of working together, lifting all boats, it works. And so 1-vote majority continued to pass those things all the way down. The last one on the thing is we had a racist flag. So we got a new flag in Minnesota and got rid of it. So it mattered. And the results of that were, I had a young man who started working on the campaign that summer in 2022. We did everything, including cannabis legalization, and I think that's what drew this kid in. He was going to work, whatever it took, he was going to work on this. But we got all this done. And he said, "Well, politics isn't that bad." He said, "This only took us a few months and we got all this stuff done." And I'm like thinking, there's a lesson in there. We know that sometimes it does take time and you have to build on it. But the fierce sense of urgency that people are feeling around issues that they care about, they have got to see a direct connection. Donald Trump does that. And it may be bad policies, but they're seeing some of the connections where he said he would try and do some of this, and he did. So.
This is, I feel like, if you want to fight authoritarianism, be aggressive about showing that democracy can work.
Have to.
Right?
You
like
have
showing
to.
that you can get that it can work and that you can get a lot of stuff done. So he seems like a really nice guy. He's kind of a savvy political killer as well. Like, I don't know if people remember that. Well, first of all, I noticed it just like doing research for this interview. And this is so smart. In 2011, there was a woman who was considering, I think, running against you as state senator in Congress, Republican. He invites her to the State of the Union to be his guest.
Yes. Yes. No, she was.
It's
she
like
was very
bipartisan,
effective.
but also like a very savvy move. And
She would have been their best candidate, and I actually liked her. And but Republican on this, and that's what I said. Keep them close, and it makes a difference. But it also works on another level that I
She
do.
says you showed a terrible side of Washington to like so that she wouldn't like it.
That was
Which is
that is true.
pretty good.
That is true. We were like, man, and then I showed her, this is the cot I sleep on because I can't afford an apartment here and everything, which was true. But no, it was like bring them there. They're again, this is 2011, so I would
time,
be quick
man.
to say this. People are still hungry for a bipartisanship. I was mentioning that I did a bunch of Veterans Day events here a couple days ago, and the vibe felt different. And two things amongst the veterans. There was a fatigue that people are tired of all this drama that comes with this guy. And there was a real desire to try and see if there were things that we could agree on together. And that Veterans Committee has always been one of those where it was. And I mean, that's why it's beyond the pale. When I see Donald Trump talk politics in front of troops, I am horrified beyond all belief, because I think as someone who served and someone who stood in front of folks, protecting our troops and making sure they are totally out of the political realm, you could feel that there was a desire to do that again. And it's just, look, this is a couple small events up in Minnesota, but it felt like there was a desire. There are ways that we can work together. And I think we need to talk about that. Sure, we'll work together and we can talk tax policy, we can talk on this. We're not going to compromise on human rights. We're not going to compromise on, personal health care decisions, but we can do some of that. And I think this is where Democrats can message across a broader spectrum. And I don't know, it's going to take all of us. Trump takes up so much oxygen that we need everybody out there. We need Gavin Newsom beating the shit out of him with Twitter things. We need J.B. Pritzker, who I call the big con of the plains, who stands up there and says, you're not coming to Chicago to do this. And different people out filling these lanes to broaden it. And what you saw is again, I keep saying this, I don't know how many Trump people we're going to convert, but there's a lot of folks out there in farm country are hurting by these policies. There's a lot of folks that voted for him and are seeing that it's not working. But the big thing was, you saw in that last election, a lot of folks voted, some for the first time, showed up in large numbers. We've got to be engaging enough and figure out how to get that broader coalition that we're always talking about, continue to broaden it and recognize we're a big tent. I mean, we had candidates who were relatively conservative. We had candidates who were fairly progressive. All won big.
Yeah, all won.
All won big.
They all were good candidates for the states or districts that they represented. Yeah.
Who they represent?
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
People in Oklahoma being worried about who the mayor of New York City is. They need to worry about being ranked 50th in education. That's what they need to worry about. So, I know my audience here, Texans to Oklahomans. So
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah, you really see he's savvy. I had a podcast on MSNBC that was, I thought, very savvy. Me and Senator Claire McCaskill, but not like the biggest thing. But we kept hearing from Governor Walz's team last summer about coming on. This is before the vice president became the nominee, and we're like, okay, we'll have him on. I don't understand. He's probably busy. I don't understand what he wants to do. And he was phenomenal. And afterwards, Claire McCaskill and I are texting everyone. I'm texting Jen O'Malley Dillon, who was at the time. But I was like, look, Tim Walz is for real, y'all. I'm just telling you. And Claire's doing the same thing to all of her contacts. And then I asked you later, you're like, yeah, that's why we went on.
We went on their podcast as an audience of two. Her and Claire McCaskill.
So Claire and I would text people and say how great Tim Walz was, and it worked, right? That was the turning point, I think. It was
I think so.
Early on.
Look, that was one of the things.
It was before he was the darling of MSNBC, and the whole weird thing had taken off.
We caught the bus. There's a whole story. You have to tell this. Maybe write a book on it. There's a whole story here on how we ended up there. It's real. Just quickly here, President Biden when he was still running earlier in the year, and we were getting ready for the convention last summer. And I love President Biden, and we're friends, and we were good. So he was going to give me something, and I was hoping it was like the ambassador to Jamaica or something, you know, like, what are we going to get here? And he said, you get to be the rules chair at the DNC.
Oh my God. Yes.
Which I'm like, what is it? He goes, oh, it's all ceremonial. You just hammer it in and get our nominee and whatever. And I said, well, that'll be nice, kind of fun. Go to the convention, be up there on stage and hit that hammer or whatever. Well, after the debate and the change, it fell upon the rules committee to find a new nominee.
No, it would have been, it had not worked out the way it did. It would have been like, it's you, like Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, and like 2 other people, and you all.
Yeah, because I was chair of the DGA.
It's crazy with how the rules
It was
are.
Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and me would have picked and gone into a room and picked the nominee.
That is how it would have worked.
That's how it's set up.
That is how it's set up. It was too late to have an actual convention and nominating process.
No, and I was the chair of the DGA, and I'm like, well, why didn't somebody tell me that? And, you know,
Yeah, who knew?
No one knew. But anyway, went to that. We went through it. We nominated, I think it was in, you know, and this will be debated forever, what's the right way to do it, should we have a mini primary, whatever it would be, but Vice President Harris came out of that, and then 2 weeks later she picks me, and somebody said, this guy is either Forrest Gump or he is an evil genius.
He's
And
an
how
evil
he,
genius.
how
Not
did he
evil,
go
but a
from
genius.
here to here? So
It was the podcast, you all.
it was the podcast, that's what it was.
So I think we're getting ready to, where's Emily? She's going to start with questions. Are you ready to, should I do one more, or are you ready to start?
We can go ahead and start. Hi,
Okay,
everyone. I'm Emily Hood. I work for the Tribune. Thank you so much for submitting your questions. So to start with Stephen from Dallas, how would you advise Texans to make progress towards improving educational outcomes for kids in pre-K through 12th grade?
Oh my God, that's good. Well, Stephen, thank you for that. This is a question that the First Lady should answer. My wife is a longtime educator and administrator and does a lot in this space of testing and assessment, trying to understand it. Look, I think the first thing on all of this is defend till the very death your public schools, no matter what. Don't let that camel get in there. Defend them. And but be really open that you've got to be innovative, and we've got to be able to take the data and take the criticisms and work at it. But again, I would go back to this. We got better achievement. We have less truancy and better graduation rates when we made sure that students were secure in their persons. They were secure in their food. They were secure at home with that child tax credit. We were making sure that there was opportunities there, so students came. And then in Minnesota, we have universal pre-K for everyone, so students come ready to do what they need to do. And then I think focusing on kids being kids. Gwen and I spent some time in Finland listening to them. You know, Finland has some of the highest achievement in the world, and they don't do homework, they don't stress out, they pay their teachers what their doctors make, and so you have some of the best people in there. So I would just say we did it in Minnesota. We invested historic amounts of money into education, and it is paying off. It is an investment that is making a difference in the economy.
Next question comes from Anthony from the Hobby School of Public Policy at the University of Houston. Lots of talk has been said about, in hindsight, of course, we would have changed things in reference to the 2024 election, but that is very general. What are some specific instances of quantifiable things you would have changed?
Yeah, well, and again, this is a tough one. I said I'm loyal to the team of where we would have been, and I think I've listened to Vice President Harris talk a little bit about this. People were looking for some separation. I think it's the trap that Donald Trump is in right now. President Biden was talking truthfully, and he said, look, compared to the rest of the world, our economy is pretty good, but the average person said, that doesn't do squat for me. It's not that good. And I don't think we addressed the affordability issue as openly. And I think it was very difficult for the vice president because I think she picked me for the same reason that she got picked. She was loyal and she was there to do her job. And we couldn't get some separation. Every administration is going to have a few things they could have done differently. And I do think the ability not to be able to have a little separation makes it difficult. Look, it was bizarre as it is, it was a change election. And Trump was seen as the change because he wasn't currently in office type of thing. So I think we should have been Again, it's not criticizing President Biden. It's a recognition that President Biden got us through COVID. President Biden kept more people alive. President Biden made America's economy as strong as anybody's, but there were still problems, and I think addressing them. But I think the Vice President was putting out plans for home ownership, putting out plans to allow Medicare to pay for home care for our parents, which all of you in this room know how important that is. I just think a little more definition away, not criticizing, but saying these are other things we would have done, because everybody's, look, we can spend time talking about the back. For me, I got to think about the future. I'm asking to become governor of Minnesota again, and it is very much in this business. What have you done for me lately? So we're leaning into heavily making sure that we have access to child care, making sure that we were just announced this week, best state in the nation for young people to have home ownership. That's a big deal. That people, if somebody's going to want, I know it's cold as shit, but it's still... But the houses are nice, and they have heat in them. And, but it's, I think, more of the future leaning, some of the definition. In 107 days, I think it was incredibly difficult to do that. But I think there's a lesson to learn there, that you have got to ask something. And again, I keep going back to this. If we could have done something to engage more of those people, tens of millions who sat on the sidelines, we just needed a small slice of them. We didn't need to convince everybody in Oklahoma to vote for us, but we certainly needed to get the people off the sidelines, and especially in Michigan, Pennsylvania, you know the story.
All right, Ethan from Flower Mound asks, as a young conservative, how does the Democratic Party plan to win over voters like me who are deeply concerned on immigration's impact on wages, housing, and crime?
Yeah, this is the good one. It goes back to that issue of separating on this. There was an issue with the border, and it didn't matter if you were a Democrat or Republican. Our system was broken. There was no good pathway for someone to be able to navigate that system in a reasonable amount of time, come to this country, follow the path, get citizenship, and what has built this country. It shouldn't take 7 years to adjudicate an asylum claim. That's why the deal that Joe Biden had negotiated put out there. And I don't think we should disagree with people, because folks want to come here legally. They want to follow the system. They don't want to be pushed into the shadows. And what we need to do is take that seriously where people are at. I think I would make the argument that I don't think the immigration issue is pushing wages down. I don't think that is the main culprit of where it's at. But I don't think we should dismiss people. I also don't think that when we're talking immigration and we're talking to conservatives about immigration, we can acknowledge that the system could be smoother. But this is one of those cases I am not going to compromise. This country is better because of immigration. We should encourage it, and we should want it. So you can do both.
Bella from the University of Texas chapter of Students Demand Action asks, Texas had Robb Elementary in 2023. Minnesota had Annunciation Church in 2025. What can Democrats in Texas learn from Democrats in Minnesota when it comes to the uphill battle for gun control and vice versa?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for asking the question. Thank you for fighting this fight. I'm in the middle of it. The First Lady and I were just in Stillwater, Minnesota earlier this week for a town hall with the parents from Annunciation, second day of school, sitting in those pews. 116 rounds came through that window in 61 seconds from a weapon that was designed to do maximum damage to people. That's what it was for. On Saturday, I also sat in a deer stand with my friend Mary from Cannon Falls. I did not get my deer, she did. But this public health epidemic, number one killer of kids age 1 to 19 is firearms now in this country. No other country has to live like this. Nothing we're proposing. What we did in Minnesota, we passed that legislation back in 2023, and we now have extreme risk protection orders or red flag laws that the first set of data came out, saved lives, obviously. You know who many of those people were? White men in rural areas who did not commit suicide because their family were able to get the guns out of the home before that happened. So there are ways to address these issues that matter. Our challenge right now is I'm trying to ask for a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Now, I have been around these things my whole life. I own firearms in my home. Nothing we're proposing would have stopped me from being in that deer stand or out shooting pheasants last month or if it's for home protection. And I think the lesson around guns and around the Annunciation shootings, around Uvalde and everything that goes with it is Republicans have learned something, and it equates to other issues. Democrats spend a lot of time winning hearts and minds on reproductive rights, on this. We saying people who, I don't necessarily saying Democrats, people who want to have gun violence prevention and smart laws that make a difference, that's the majority of people. That it polls very highly for people to do this. But we win hearts and minds, Republicans just win power. And then they do what they're going to do. So I think what you have to do is when you're in a position where you can make a difference on this, you have to make the difference and do it. And there's a lot of votes. I took the vote on the ACA. There are votes that you should be willing to go home over. I'm making the case right now, and this is on the heels of one of the most horrific acts Minnesota has ever seen. Gwen and our dearest friend, one of the most consequential politicians in Minnesota history, was gunned down in her doorway, along with her husband and her pup. We don't have to live like this. We are choosing to live like this when every other nation in the world does not choose to live like this. They do not have to worry about sending their kids to school. We do not have to terrorize kids with active shooter drills. There are things that we know we can do, and I'm at this point right now, I'm fine to lose an election over this one because I'm going to fight this thing to the end because we've got to do something.
Preston from Austin asks, with the recent win of Zohran Mamdani and uproar over Senate Democrats cave-in over the shutdown, where do you see the leadership and strategy of the Democratic Party shifting towards as we approach the 2028 election?
Yeah, look, I'm not a pundit. I just do this job and act like one, I guess, once in a while. This was good news. We should be a good party. The people of New York decided that Mayor-elect Mamdani was their best choice, and they voted for him. We should celebrate that. In New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill's now going to be the governor. Abigail Spanberger down in Virginia, and across this country, down in Mississippi, folks won. I think the leadership of the party needs to take the lesson that the closer you get to the ground on things, the better. And in Minnesota, I'll make the case for this. I think Minnesota has stayed blue. Our demographics are the same as Michigan, not that different than Iowa, Wisconsin. All of them went. We did not, and I would say it's because of the organization around the party structure that gives us about a 2 or 3 point advantage. And we empower county units and township units. We have field offices open year-round in some of our smallest counties that are doing outreach. So guess who's doing the food drives? The Democratic Party unit. We're not Democrats in Minnesota, we're DFL, Democratic Farmer Labor. But it's that piece of it. So I think this leadership, if you're looking for a white knight to ride in, they're not coming in. You're gonna, it's not going to be who can give the best speech or who's the most elegant or any of that. It's going to be the party listening to the people on the ground who are bringing policies. They voted around economics, and some of these areas shifted pretty hard. Look, the congressional district that I represented, I was only the second Democrat since 1892 to hold that seat, and I was able to hold it for 12 years. And they voted for Obama twice. When I won that seat for the last time in 2016, I won, but Donald Trump won by nearly 20 points. So people are moving and shifting, and I think if we're looking just for one person, it's going out and building the infrastructure at the county level. It's registering the folks to vote. I had to get 40,000 people that voted for Donald Trump and voted for me. All these years later, I still lose sleep over that, of how that happened. Because they were still moving. They were still moving, and I don't think they're solidified. So what I would say as a party, we thought we were after John Kerry's election, we thought that was the end of things. We didn't have anything. 2 years later, I wash up into Congress, a school teacher with no experience, and 50 of my friends. 2 years after that, junior senator from Illinois is president. We have the House, the Senate, a president with a 70% approval rating. It'll be back, but I would argue this. We passed the ACA, but when we had that majority, we should have done so much more. And I think that was a mistake, and that opened up the door.
All right, we have time for one last question here. Connor Rice from Corpus Christi asks, what is your message to young people to meet this political moment?
To young people,
Yes.
we just need you to hold on long enough till all of us are gone who are screwing this up. And so I love this idea of youth, as long as it's balanced with this. You know, the ageism that comes into this sometimes, you know, because look, we've seen older folks who can function pretty well, and we've seen young people who aren't the brightest too. You know, it goes both ways. But I do think the sense of how many are engaged and that they're willing to get engaged in politics. They're not cynical yet. It's amazing. They should be cynical. This is hell that we're living in. And they're not. They're not. They're optimistic about change. And what I say to this is, and I tell them if you're looking at this, and I think many of you know this if you've been around it, Jen could say this, it's the people who show up. Just show up. In 2004, I showed up at a rally for John Kerry, never been to a political event, teaching school, 41 years old. Next thing I know, I'm on that stage in Philadelphia. And that was not, I didn't like plan my life out to say, you know, this is what I'm going to do. I tell young people, I didn't plan my life to be in this, but I think my life prepared me well. Bring your authentic self, bring your experiences, enter into that, and all of a sudden you're going to see exciting stuff. I think we've got a New York City congressional race that has like 4 people under 40 that are running for that. That's a good thing. And I think for many of you, you can make that future you want to see. And look, demographics are coming. It is inevitable of what's coming. We are a multiracial, multicultural society, and that has always been our advantage. I think once we get some folks who just can't quite get used to that, they're kind of aging out, it'll be an opportunity. So I would say don't get cynical, come in and do it.
Thank you. Those great questions. Governor, so good to see you. Thank you so much. Such a great discussion. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Enjoy the rest of the festival.